Just a few short tips then about actually dealing with a mixer. I'm not going to go into the nuts and bolts of how a mixer works and also on. I presume that you're going to know about this yourself. Some very simple tips if you're dealing with a large PA system is before you play anything, if let's presume that nothing is playing right now or you're about to bring in a track, it's really imperative before you hit play on any playback system, you don't have a fader up. You have to have the faders down before you start, because if you have it too high and someone else has left the gain too far up and you start off with this, it could be too much. You could have a nasty surprise. So always before you bring in any sound, it's basically you're going to start from zero and bring it up rather than start from up here and bring it down to wherever it should be. The simple thing about the gain structure in the club is it should be set up so that the maximum output from the mixer is not going to distort the loudspeakers. Having said that, absolutely under no circumstances should you be playing with the red overload LEDs coming on. That is to be avoided because you're causing a square wave, which is basically has a certain type of energy which is very good at destroying speaker systems. You probably need to get it into the orange basically for the club system to be. That's probably where it's calibrated for, but you can find out from the previous DJ or even ask if there's a sound guy or a girl there. You can ask them how loud should you be playing, because it can be that you're playing too low and their system is you don't have the full dynamic range then, so they might tell you even to bring it up, but absolutely not having the red overload indication at any time during the set. It's well worth taking care of that. The other thing which is super important is monitoring. This is more important, monitoring on the speakers in the DJ booth when you're trying to beat match on vinyl, for example, because then you really need an accurate monitoring system. The problem is that there's a kind of a tendency to whack up this the local monitoring system just in the DJ booth to be louder than the main system, so that you can kind of hear what you're doing, because the main sound system might sound great on the dance floor, but it's probably not going to sound so good in the DJ booth because you're probably up against the wall, maybe off in a corner somewhere. You're just going to have masses and masses of bass. It's going to be all over the shop. There's going to be delays between this and that. It's going to be just probably acoustically a complete mess. So the tendency is then to whack the monitoring up louder than the main PA system. You're going to cause yourself an awful lot of hearing damage if you're doing that. Generally, the simple advice is you can even leave off the local monitoring and use the main PA system if the sound is that bad. But if you're going to use the DJ monitoring, have it at a level that's not too damaging. And having said that, to get it to a level that's going to be louder than the main PA and actually make it of any use is probably going to be damaging to your hearing. So in that way, definitely invest in some kind of hearing protection. That's another topic. If you're doing a live set with your own instruments, or even you're doing something with a laptop, having a space like this in a club is normally not going to happen. It's normally going to be packed up full of gear, and you're going to have a hard time finding a spot if you're going to bring some of your own equipment. If you are doing a live set of your own music, it's worth having a rider, which is a specification that you have as a PDF on your website. So you're going to tell the club owner or the festival organizer exactly how much space you need. Like, I need 1 meter, 2 meters, whatever, tabletop, and so many power outlets. And this is ideal. I mean, you won't show up in a club and basically get like a space like this and power just available. This would be quite uncommon. So try to specify in advance if you actually have like an instrument. For example, you've got a synthesizer or something like this you're bringing, whether you need to bring a stand for it, whether there's going to be a table for it. But if you're flying, for example, you don't want to be having to carry stands and stuff like that if at all possible. So try to specify that on a rider to tell the owner or the organizer what you need before you arrive, because it's nerve-wracking enough to show up and realize that you just literally don't have the space to set up the gear that you want. Or the other one is that you show up at a gig and you don't realize, but it's a slightly different power socket. I mean, in Europe we have many countries have slightly different power plugs, so it's worthwhile if you are playing internationally getting some adapters. If you're bringing equipment, get some travel adapters, because it's no fun trying to rewire plugs literally a couple of seconds before you go on stage. Also, if there is a front of house mixer, something like this setup, don't touch it. Basically, unless the sound guy, you consult with the sound guy first, because it could be that the DJ mixer is going through a front of house mixer like this before the PA. Or it could be the other way around, but you don't know. So basically, just if there is equipment like that on stage, don't touch it unless you have permission from the sound guy or the girl. You've talked to them and you know what's going on. The best advice is just to not mess around with it. Okay, so if there are like if there's an amp rack or something like that, also you don't want to start messing around with the settings on it. Really, like, it's a good way of really falling out with the sound person or the club owner, especially if this is a speaker management system. Normally these are password protected anyway, but you're not going to fix anything. You're not going to make anything sound better generally, unless you're quite experienced. So just, I would say, hands off it. The amps, also, there is also a very specific order in which things should be switched on and off. So don't go switching things off and on unless you really know what you're doing and you've also talked to the sound guy or girl. So these are the amps. I can switch them on now because the mixer is already on. So we can switch the amps on. So everything else is up first. The amps are the last thing that go on, and they're the first thing to get switched off as well at the end of the night. So the problem is, going outside of that order, you've got a good chance of getting some nice pops and clicks. If the amps are on, you switch off the mixer, you get some nice loud pops on the speakers. Again, on the monitoring side, you want to keep the headphone volume basically to a level which is enough that you can hear what's going on, but really be careful about damaging your ears, because it is the headphones nowadays. For example, you get like 2,000 milliwatts. That's 2 watts into each side. This is ridiculous. This is like more easily enough to cause permanent hearing damage, no question. So it's a good point to try to use a headphone volume which is enough that you can just about hear what's going on if you're doing beat mixing. If you're actually not beat matching on vinyl, then you mightn't even need headphones, because you probably know the tracks and you're just queuing them up. You don't even need to listen in separately. But if you're doing vinyl and you're having to beat mix, then yeah, it's quite tricky to get a volume which is not completely damaging to your ears, but loud enough that you can hear it over the PA. It's again, hearing protection is absolutely required, basically, if you're going to work in this field. Okay, so that's kind of it from this rough introduction to DJing. I'll do a couple of more videos maybe on more specific aspects like the mixer, mixing technique, and programming a set and so on. The simple things about the set are like breaking it down into little chunks of 2 or 3 tracks that work well together, that have a specific form, like a mini set in themselves, and then you're adding these together until you get like a 2-hour performance. And even the hearing protection, there's probably a whole video I could do on hearing protection, so I might even do that, because that's actually one of the most important aspects, and you won't realize how valuable your hearing is until it's gone and there's no way to get it back. So be careful. If you can, get something like the Etymotic ER20. They're pretty good. There's also Alpine do ones, and quite a few other brands, but you can get these pretty good hearing protection from like $15-20 upwards. If you're doing regular stuff, then you probably want to get a mold made for your ear and have the custom ones made. They're much more comfortable. It costs you about $200, maybe $300, depending where you are. More worthwhile spending money on that than anything else, because your hearing is something which once it's gone, you can't fix it. At the volumes, at the levels that you're getting in the modern clubs, it only takes a few minutes to get permanent hearing damage from that. Yeah, that's about it. I hope you had some fun in watching this, and let me know, and take care. Till next time.